Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, and friends of Circularity. My name is Lenka Procházková, and I'm head of Czech Liaison Office for Education and Research, and it is my privilege to welcome you at yet another edition of Science Café, this time as a partner event of the European Commission's Green Week. At today's special edition, we decided to focus on the very important topic of circularity. A topic present in our everyday lives and a topic that each one of us influences by their daily habits and small decisions that in turn shape our economy. To successfully deliver on its European Green Deal ambition, the EU needs to drive a global transition to a carbon-neutral, resource-efficient and circular economy, where resources use is decoupled from economic growth. That's why in 2020, the European Commission adopted the new Circular Economy Action Plan. The EU's transition to a circular economy will reduce pressure on nature resources and will create sustainable growth and jobs. It is also a prerequisite to achieve the EU's 2050 climate neutrality target and to halt biodiversity loss. This year's Green Week focuses on skills. And that is why we decided to hold a debate that will, next to aspects of circularity, also focus on the transfer of the circular know-how towards society, students, and companies. Lastly, we are happy to organize this event with our partners who view circularity equally as important, and those are the representation of the South Moravian region to the EU, represented by Vendula Nováčková, Czech Center Brussels, represented by Kristina Halounová, and also the colleagues from representation of Prague to the EU. And now I'm happy to pass the word to the moderator of the evening, Mr. Petr Holík, who covers various climate-related topics in his great podcast 2050, that we can definitely recommend to listen if you are interested. So I think we are in really good hands. Petr, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody, can you hear me even in the back? Great, how are you? Yeah, good. I see some nods, so nods are good. Thank you for having us. Thank you for being here. Big thanks goes to the organizing team. So thank you very much for organizing this great event. We are very excited to be here. Tonight's topic of this Science Café is circular literacy. By the way, it's pretty hard word to pronounce for me, circular. Is it difficult for you as well? Yeah, for some, yeah, circular. I have to admit, I even looked it up at Google Translator and made it tell it back to me. So I learned to pronounce it, circular. And I have to tell it over and over this whole evening. So I have to apologize in advance. If sometimes you don't understand what I'm saying, it's very probable that I'm trying to say the word circular. Circular. All right, so now you know. If you don't understand, is this word. So what can you expect from tonight, except from my bad pronunciation? We have two great guests whom I will introduce shortly, and they will start with a short presentations just to introduce their work and the topic of their focus. And then I have prepared some questions for them. So we will discuss it here, and later in the second part of the evening, there will be a lot of space and a lot of time for your questions and a very big discussion. So if you have questions already, or if some questions appear in your mind during our talk, please save them for later, and we will definitely have time to discuss it all. Let me introduce our guests, or first of our guests. First one is Vladimír Kočí. And he's a lecturer at both University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague and also Czech Technical University in Prague. Hey, you can come in. Big applause for Vladimír, please. So Vladimír focuses on product ecology and sustainability. In 2021, he founded LCA Studio, which centers on life cycle analysis of products, services, and technologies, helping companies to reduce their carbon footprint. So, stage is yours. Please. Show us your short presentation and introduce a bit of your work. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you very much for organizers to inviting me. For me, it's a nice opportunity to introduce you one of the newest, maybe the really newest department, university department in Czech Republic. It is the Department of Sustainability and Product Ecology. We have found not around 2 years ago, and now we have the first students of this quite a new study program. I, in a couple of minutes, would like to introduce what we are doing to have some idea for you. And we have such signs here for communication. So we are at the University of Chemistry and Technology. So it's maybe strange for you why at this university are some people interested in sustainability and ecology and things like this. The reason is that we have to understand our planet in some limit, in some planetary boundaries, and these boundaries are very often connected with our needs, and our needs is almost usually fulfilled by the industrial activities. So the industrial activities has to be somehow managed to be in the context of the planet, and that's why we as the principal industrial-based university is working. The main tool we use for our work is methodology called life cycle assessment. It's a specific methodology which was based maybe 20, 30 years ago. And one of the maybe well-known output of this method is the carbon footprint. So today's when we work and talk about the carbon footprinting of products, organizations, we have behind the LCA like the principal methodological tool. And as well, in the context of circular economy, the LCA is the principal analytical tool which is giving us some very values, data to evaluate if the solution we want to apply is more or less circular. Another specific case of LCA is the consequential LCA study. So, for example, if you want to change in policy something, like let's change the taxes of our personal work, let's change the taxes for plastic packaging or something like this, and the LCA approach can give us some overview how this will help change the environmental impacts if such a policy will be applied. Another tool we use is material flow analysis. Contrary to LCA, it is it's top-down approach, evaluating some regions, for example, what substances or what resources is going inside the region, and what waste, for example, are released away into the countryside. So Next topic, try to combine somehow. This is the industrial symbiosis. We are helping to industrial companies to cooperate somehow and to use their outputs like inputs for another one. So there is some domino effect in our industrial daily business, and so the industrial symbiosis is some holistic approach trying to apply the win-win strategies for industries. One of the most developed sector in this is the construction sector, which more than maybe 10 years ago started to apply some sustainability goals. We have also some sustainability construction schemes like LEED, BREEAM, and some other more developed techniques, which help us to evaluate what environmental burden has such a specific construction, building, or what you're interested in. So that's why we started in the construction industry, because it's the most developed in this area. Next is contrary to the houses, the big things we are living in, we have small things we use, like microphone, like my jacket. So we focus also on products of daily life, and we want to evaluate its environmental impacts and trying to define them a way which will be more sustainable. Of course, there is no product can be sustainable. More sustainable can be our approach to life, but we can use more or less environmental friendly products for fulfilling our needs. So this is why we have in our group also designers, industrial designers, which try to apply some ecological aspects into their design work. One of a specific topic of our department is also the food and drinking, because one of the main environmental impacts beside of energy consumption is the food we need every day. And that's why we try to also evaluate the food habits of different countries, different habit styles like vegetarian and vegans, etc. And everything this can give us some new ideas how to be more sustainable in simple word. One of the very important point of our work is the resource security. Our understanding of sustainability is that we have to count at first line with the resources and the energy resources, and then with all other things. I don't want stress that only these two make the sustainability, but I want to underline them because we very often forget about the resources in the context of sustainability. 1-2 years ago, when our colleagues presented some work about the sustainability, we always had the resources there, like one of the output beside of the carbon footprint, for example. And the people, others, said, why are you interested in resources? It's not about the nature protection. Now, or about sustainability. Now, after one big change, like the war in Ukraine, you see that the resources are the principal thing in our sustainability way of life. So that's why this is also the answer, the question why on the technical university we solve the sustainability, because without resources it's not possible to do. Next, please. And finally, some examples of our research. This is one of the biggest projects we have in Czech Republic today. It's the Center of Environmental Research, Waste Management, Circular Economy and Environmental Security. We cover maybe 10 different organizations and universities, and we solve some problems about the sustainability, about the circular economy, industrial symbiosis, etc. Another example of our work is, contrary to the previous one, is the Aptomat project, which is focused only on aluminium. Nothing else, only aluminium. But aluminium is quite a good example for circular economy because it's a metal which can be used in a circular system. And if we use it again and again, we save a lot of energy, which is ordinarily needed for a production of virgin aluminium. So it makes a big sense to do something in the circularity with the aluminium. We have a lot of partners from other countries, starting from Turkey till Portugal, from Sweden till Serbia, so going across all the Europe. Next, please. And as our expertise is focused mainly on the industrial companies, we also offer our knowledge as a service for the business partners, and we founded the LCA Studio, like private company, which is now focused on carbon footprint calculation certifications. We do also the product focused carbon footprint and the organization carbon footprint, because they are different things. Both of them are quite crucial in these days. We have now plenty of business partners, which we are happy. If I talk about the carbon footprint, please don't forget that there are more environmental problems, not only the climate change, maybe one of the most important of these days, but it's not the only one. The life cycle assessment is a good tool which can give you some overview if the technology which is focused, for example, for diminishing of the carbon footprint is not problematic in other way. For example, producing more toxic substances on the countryside. So never forget that carbon footprint is not the overall environmental indicator. It's one of several of them, and all of them has to be evaluated somehow in common holistic. We also do the Sustainability Summit, which is now established meeting of sustainability managers. Why for the sustainability managers? Because sustainability manager is emerging new job. Couple of years ago, there was nothing like this, and now almost every company, namely in industrial branch, need at least one, but very often more and more people working in the sustainability consultancy or sustainability management. And we established this as an annual meeting for these people which want to meet and exchange their knowledge and experience. And because we need also to educate these sustainability managers, we established and we have already accredited a new study program, the engineer level, so Master of Science level study program, Sustainability and Circular Economy, which is consisting of, let's say, 3 branches. One branch is more technological, like waste technology, water technology, cleaning air technologies. The second is the analytical branch, like life cycle assessment, material flow analysis, etc. And the third one is more the governmental, like in the context of ESG governmental, I mean that you do the management, the HR, the PR, and all these tools we have to use. And this is almost final slide, I think. Yes, we also offer some lifelong learning courses for people already working in both in the circular economy and the sustainability management. Yes, because it's also the role of the university, not only to teach the students, but also to be in contact with people from the practice. So thank you very much for waiting so long for this long introduction. I'm sorry for this, but I wanted to give you some framework of our interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vladimír. But at least everybody now knows we have a lot of topics to ask you about later in the discussion, so thank you for this introduction. And I would like to introduce our second guest, last but not least, and also second. It's Pavel Zedníček. Please give him a big applause and then I'll tell you something about him. Pavel is the CEO of the Institute of Circular Economy. They put it in the name of their company, so respect. They are focusing on consulting, research, advocacy, and network development. In addition to the Institute's industry decarbonization study, of which he is the initiator and co-author, Pavel has undertaken consulting projects for firms and public authorities in the Czech Republic related to the circular economy. Pavel.
Yes, thank you
Your
very
introductory
much.
presentation, go for it.
Thank you. I'm just gonna try to put this a little bit because I have problems with cables. It happened to me on the last
Gentlemen, you are making it very hard for the camera people, you know.
Okay, so, all right. So maybe I don't want to, is it fine like this? Cool, because I don't want to sit down and I'll bore you. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming here in such large numbers. My name is Pavel, as Petr already mentioned, and I'm actually a graduate of the University of Chemistry and Technology that Mr. Kočí mentioned. He was actually my teacher, so I hope I won't be graded tomorrow or today after the input. But I do think that he has done great work in terms of propagating circular economy, LCA, and other topics that he had already mentioned. So really, thanks a lot for that. I'm representing here an NGO, or you could call a think tank, which is called Institute of Circular Economy. We've been set up in 2014 and trying to work on the topic of circular economy. I don't have a presentation, so I'll just give you a few numbers, or maybe a few thoughts from my end. Maybe how did I get into the topic? I was firstly studying the University of Chemistry and Technology, and if actually the course that Mr. Kočí had mentioned was there already maybe a few years ago, I would not even leave to the Netherlands, where I was actually studying afterwards, because I was actually looking for a course like this, and I'm super happy that it is happening right now in the Czech Republic. I then came back with the vision to, of course, change the Czech Republic, but I'm now realizing that it's not happening, and it's not going to happen for quite some time, but we're trying our best. What do we do as an organization? I guess that's your main question. So it's around 12 to 15 people that we work with. And the reason why we're here is that while circular economy is a great topic, and we're going to discuss why it is a great topic. It is not a reality. It is not a reality in the Czech Republic, but it's also not a reality in the European Union yet. That's why we have all the different regulations coming up from the EU, because the system which is right now in place is not actually supporting circular economy businesses. So in short, I would say circular economy at this point is not a very good business case. And the reason for that is that the system is not well set up for that. I mean, it's still very easy to get rid of the waste. It's actually still one of the easiest ways. One of the numbers is that still in the Czech Republic, half of the municipal waste is being landfilled. Another, let's say 12 to 15% is being incinerated. So if we're lucky, I guess 1/3 of the produced waste annually is being recycled. And we try to change that. How we try to change that? Well, we work on research. So we publish reports that actually show, hey, this is how circular economy could help. This is how it could work. There are some recommendations how we can move that forward. So that's one thing. The other one is that where we work with companies directly, implementing circular economy into their practices. The third pillar upon which base our operations is that we build community. So we have around 65 organizations on our platform, which we call Czech Circle Hotspot, and we try to create a movement around it, a place where company representatives, universities, startups can come and discuss it, but also as a movement of force. And of course, last but not least, there are some advocacy activities. So we try to change the landscape. We try to promote some regulation that will actually make circular business models profitable, which is unfortunately in the mainstream still not the case. So that's about me, that's about the Institute. I think that the topic of circular economy is fascinating. It actually is the reason why I'm spending my more than 8 hours per day time of it. And the reason for that, I think it asks a simple question. Can we increase or maybe sustain or maintain our prosperity while consuming less resources? Because up until now, we've been doing the opposite. We've been actually increasing our prosperity by consuming more resources, thereby producing more waste, and we have to change that. So that's the key question circular economy asks. There are many answers to that, and we're going to explore them today.
Thank you very much, Pavel. Thanks. All right, so we've been circling the topic of circular economy for a while, a little bit, and just to get us all on the same page, I would like to start with very basic introductory question, but maybe it's not so basic. We will see, and that's what actually is circular economy, and maybe another question hidden in there: what isn't? Because earlier today we were talking about that maybe sometimes people like interchange things and put things into the circular economy area that shouldn't be there and so on. So maybe Vladimír, could you start with this question? What is actually circular economy and what isn't?
Circular economy is one of the conception of the environmental protection. That means that we have, in the context of environmental protection, we have tools like some specific analytical methods or some taxes or improvement. So there are tools. Then we have concepts like circular economy, like green chemistry, like integrated prevention of pollutants, etc. And finally, we have the strategies, like strategy of sustainability. So this is three-level systems, and we very often change the tools with the concept and with the strategies. In this context, it's good to know that circular economy is one of the concepts of the sustainability as a strategy. And as any concept, even the circular economy has several specific tools which can help to apply and to realize the circularity as it is.
Pavel, I'd like to maybe a little bit follow up on some things you said in the end of your short presentation, because my question is, why are we really talking about circular economy? Because it's one of the concepts, as you said, and it seems to be an important concept when people are organizing science cafes about it. So where can circular economy help from the high level perspective, and why is it important?
Right. Yeah, so I think it's important to say that it is a concept and it is a path or a way how to achieve something. And what is it that we want to actually achieve, right? And I think Mr. Kočí in his first slide mentioned the planetary boundaries or planetary limits that we are facing, right? We are living on a finite planet and we have to somehow deal with that. And we have to solve the issues that come with it. And whilst up until now we've been consuming a lot of materials and we've been basing our prosperity on that, it's not going to work like that for a long time. So there's a time limit to it. And circular economy offers a path to that. And it actually says, or it's actually coming up with other questions and answers, and it's trying to resolve this one with saying, okay, so let's find ways how we can actually consume less materials. Let's find ways how we can actually produce less materials, consume less materials, but it has to come also with the B. Is it still going to be profitable for us from the long-term perspective? So that's sort of like the philosophical one. But maybe I can also distinguish it into like three different levels. The first one is that many view circular economy as, you know, another form of waste management. And that is something that has been, I think, in the Czech Republic quite vivid, and it is still there. For example, the Ministry of Environment, I think there for some time they were actually considering, so okay, so maybe we'll just rename our department Circular Economy Department, and it's, you know, resolved. So from Waste Management Department, we're going to move to Circular Economy Department. But that's not the answer, right? It's like, if you would be solving just the production of waste, it's like if you would be, let's say, if you would be sick and you would be taking a pill to get sick very quickly, you wouldn't be focusing on why did I get sick, but only on the results. And the same thing is with circular economy. We cannot focus just on why are we producing waste or how can we actually deal with that. But there are some reasons for that. So that's like one narrow view of circular economy. Let's focus on waste management and let's optimize our system so that we don't waste that much. The other is focusing a little bit more broadly, and that's more in the area, okay, so how can we optimize the production? How can we, you know, produce materials which are maybe lightened? How can we produce services where we need less materials, thereby being more circular? That's another perception. And the third one, and that's my favorite definition of circular economy, it's more in the terms of providing the services and needs with the least materials. And there you are also, you know, looking into completely different pathways, such as, okay, maybe I don't even need this product, or maybe I can just borrow it for some time and then I can give it back. So, and these are like three different maybe perceptions of how we can view it, because sometimes we're just focused on waste management, sometimes we're focused on optimization of systems, but the other one I think is a much broader. So it's not easy, I would say, in answering the topic. I think circular economy often brings more questions than answers, but I think it's difficult to ask these questions.
I would love to hear some numbers. Well, because I love hard data, right? And where I'm going is just to continue this discussion to what is actually the potential of these principles you are talking about, and if there are some good practices or maybe studies of potential of some of these tools inside circular economy in the great environmental issues we have nowadays, like climate change, like biodiversity loss, and maybe some other things. So is there something specific that we can say that because of this circular tool we can, I don't know, produce less greenhouse gases in this kind of sector? So if you could just mention some of these examples, it would be great. If you have some numbers, or at least, you know, show us a direction where this is going.
I give you some data. About 2010, we had in average in Czech Republic personal production of waste about 300 kilos per person per year. Now, after 12 years, we have more than 500 kilos. That means that it's still increasing. increasing, and we consume a lot of European funds for solving the waste problem, but the money are consumed somewhere. We have a new biogas production, we have better landfills, better incinerators, but as a result is that we have still more and more waste. And this is such evidence that we have some trouble. We are in trouble, and we don't know how to really make it better. And what Pavel told, I fully agree. The circular economy is not waste management version 2. It's really a new and more broader concept, maybe ending with waste management, but waste management itself is not a part of circular economy. Of course, it's part of our business and our daily life, but what consists circular economy of is a lot of tools, and the last and the worst of it is the recyclation. If we cannot do something better, we should recycle. But this is really, from the concept of circular economy, is the worst.
And for me, this is the one that comes up in my mind as a first one, like circular economy. Okay, it's recycling. I have to take the plastic bottle to the container.
That's
of
why
course,
I want
I'm circular.
because our society, maybe because of the activities of our ministry, but they do what can do. They do a lot of, but the principle is that the recycling is the worst case in the circularity. Of course, it's good, it helps, it's better than to dispose the material, but it is the last. We should also apply other tools, starting with the economy tools like the real value of the man work, the sharing economy, a lot of other aspects. Pavel can give you a lot of other examples. I'm more technical, so I'm not familiar with all of them, but it's necessary to apply also other tools than just environmental technology like recycling version 2, 3, 4. So I don't have exact numbers because your question was what the circular economy as a tool can improve, but it's not a tool, it's a concept of several tools. And if we apply recycling as one tool, we can make it better, let's say, 10%. If we apply other, maybe some economical tools, we can make it more effective, and additional 30%. I don't know. But this is it, that we very often mixed the topics. Circular economy's concept is several tools we should apply to be more free of materials. I mean, free in the term of the resource security, because we are very dependent on the materials. Our society extremely dependent on the fossil fuels, on some rare metals, and we cannot imagine what happens if we do not have it in short future. And not only these, also the phosphorus is crucial substance. We are very afraid what happened if in a couple of tens years we will be short on phosphorus, because current way of agriculture is fully dependent on the phosphorus mined from Morocco or from one part of Russia. Of course, in agriculture we use also nitrogen, but the nitrogen is the production in ammonia, for example, is heavily dependent on the cheap energy, again based on the fossil fuels. So our society is very sensitive in resources.
So what you're saying, it's not just an environmental concept, it's also very much connected to material security and to the way we do things, we produce things.
Yes, and this is a point I want to stress, that it was not very often to be heard in the context of circular economy, the resource security, but I think it is really the cornerstone for it. And maybe this can give us the circular economy into a bit different light and maybe more progressive for the future.
Maybe a similar thing that happened to decarbonization of electricity in Czech Republic lately. It used to be environmental topic, and now it's national security topic, and now it's energy security topic, and maybe this reframing would help to push more circular economy principles.
Yeah, maybe around the data, I've already mentioned some in the first input. And the municipal waste part is just one part of the waste we produce, right? And we said that recycling is the worst, but even worse is landfilling and incinerating it. But still, half of the municipal waste is being just, I'm always saying, in the age of AI, the only thing we can do with waste is put it from one place to the other and leave it there for hundreds of years, right? It's a bit absurd in these terms. So if we recycle, let's say 1/3 of the municipal waste, we can be happy. But I mean, that's a very far path towards circularity. And the other thing, or maybe a bit more broadly, I think the reason why circular economy is a strategic topic in the Green Deal and in the context of the European Union, it's first, well, we've realized that we cannot solve the climate crisis just by focusing on energy. There's a lot of embodied emissions in the cement, in concrete, in steel, in all of the heavy energy materials. And the more we optimize it, the less emissions we consume. So one first thing is that the EU has it as a climate strategy, basically. The other one is intuitively, if you take a lot of resources from the ground annually, you're going to destroy a lot of nature, right? So that's the reason why there's a very close link to biodiversity. The third one is a resource-oriented point of view. If you look on the global map, Europe is tiny compared to China, compared to the US, and our resource abundance is not very high. Therefore, we have to retain the materials somehow, and we try to retain it by the products that are already on the market, thereby utilizing it the most. So resource efficiency or resource security. And the third one, I think, is some sort of innovativeness. It forces us to think about new ways. How do we produce goods? How do we produce economic value? How do we produce, how do we increase our GDP? So these are like 4 key objectives of circular economy. And unfortunately, on many factors and on many, let's say, indicators, we're very far from actually attaining it.
Thank you very much, Ferky, for some of these specific examples. Before we get to your questions, which will be shortly, so if you already have questions, remember them. Soon we will get there. I would like to focus on the Czech context, because that's maybe something that we can bring to you who are not maybe from Czech Republic, all of you. So how is this topic alive in the Czech Republic? And the two of you maybe have different experiences from different areas. Like Vladimír is rooted in the academic environment, so you can maybe talk more about that. Pavel, you are talking to, or both of you are talking to businesses, to companies. So what is the specific Czech approach to the circular economy? You're smiling already. I'm looking forward to the answer. And what benefits maybe does it have, and what barriers are there? What's wrong with it, and what's good in it, if I ask this way?
To be honest, I think that it's not very well welcomed topic in Czech Republic. Generally, we have to do it. Our colleagues from the Ministry of Environment, namely from the Department of Wastes, they do a great job. They prepared a strategy for circular economy for next decades in Czech Republic. But to me, it seems to be more like we can do this and we can support it from the funds of EU, and it's not some straightforward, similar, easy tool what to do to improve our circularity in our general management or economy. So I'm a bit skeptical in this now. I see after some time that it's not the topic number one. 5-6 years ago, it started to be interesting. The people working in the context of waste management were somehow inspired in this. They were supported a lot of recycling technology, and now we are very often talking about recyclation. We will recycle all the wastes, everything will be blessed because of the recyclation. But this is not the final solution. The recyclation very often needs a lot of energy, needs some new chemicals going inside, produce another waste. The output, the secondary resources are not always to be used again as a virgin materials, namely in the plastic, because the packaging of food is a very typical example of this. So I would like to apply more tools in our Czech economy. Why I see, or where I see the problem, is that the circular economy from the governmental perspective is understood like a problem of Minister of Environment. But it is not. It's not only. Because we have to solve the circular economy also with the financial sector, with the human, the social aspects. It's also about the social, how to say, about man resources, for example, about the different taxes, because we have very high taxes for man work compared to very cheap materials. This is maybe the principal problem, because it's cheaper for you to buy a new glass, for example, than to, I know the glass is not easy to be repaired again, but the repairment of the products is very often more expensive than to buy a new device. And this is for me the principal problem. In history, it was common that we use again the fabric, we use again the metals for almost centuries, as long as it was possible. And now we are consuming every day a new thing. If you want to have one beer, you drink it and you produce a waste. This is crazy. This is crazy in the principle, and no recyclation will change this. We need to work with our habits, and this is what I'm crucially missing in our discussion in the circular economy in Czech Republic. It's not about habits, about the couple of industrial branches, and namely about the wastes.
And is it better somewhere else? Like, do you see that in, I don't know, Western Europe or some countries the discussion is better? Is further?
I don't have such overview to compare it directly, but I know that the waste, the communal waste management in Austria or Germany is quite different compared to Czech. There are different sources of money. It's a different financing system. And if you go to Austria, for example, as a tourist, you have a problem to put away your trash. There are not boxes for it, because they have a system that you really do not need produce such a big volume of the waste. So it's possible to do, but our economy do not welcome this, because every operation in our economy brings money for the state. If you produce something, it's taxed. If you sell it, it's taxed. If you have to manage it as a waste, it also brings money for the state. So the will of the state, I don't want to personalize it, just generally, the will of state to change this, it's very weak. Because why? We need money as a state, as a government. And if we will fulfill need of a man without consumption of resources and the production of the taxes, it's not in what the state needs or wants. This is strange. It is, I think, a nightmare for economists that we will just fulfill our needs and do not buy something.
So again, we are going for some systemic change, for change of habits, more than just something.
Yeah, of course, that maybe, for last word, in economy we do not count with the externalities, the environmental externalities. This is maybe one of the crucial points. Yes.
Could you share your view, Pavel, on the circularity in the Czech context?
Yeah. So when I was studying abroad, and then I was coming back, I was actually, at first I was worried that I won't find a job in sustainability. Luckily, I think now there's a movement around it, also forced by regulation and other factors. But so it's happening. Sustainability, I think, is slowly but surely moving forward. Whether circular economy as one part of it is part of it, that's another question, and I would lean towards this view that it is not viewed as a priority. I think one of the key issues is that, generally speaking, environmental topics in the Czech Republic are not that well received. If I think there was a questionnaire by some institution, what was the perception of inhabitants towards the Green Deal, that was mostly negative. But once we've put more specific thoughts behind it, like, do you care about nature? Do you care about, where your kids will be growing up? It's positive, but we can label it Green Deal. And maybe similarly, some view circular economy as a Green Deal label in many terms, and that's not a good thing. Another thing I think is a bit of a problem-oriented mindset that Czech people have. I think we're great risk managers. We tend to find risks anywhere, and we're good at it. I mean, we should be proud of the fact that we can do so, but on the other side, we could also be maybe a bit more proactive in terms of what's going to happen, what's in front of us. I think in many aspects, we have not still been able to tell to ourselves in the Czech Republic that the change in front of us is inevitable in terms of the actions that we need to take care of. And we still have the perception, okay, so we're largely industrial. I think we're the second most industrial country in the EU. If you put it into gross value added, we have a large automotive sector. The energy sector is quite intense. So we tend to kind of protect it in a way. This is how we've built our identity after the 1990s, and this is how we've grown. And now someone is forcing us to change it, but not a little bit, but dramatically. That's what you have mentioned. It's not just a slight tweak to something. So that's thinking about Green Deal more generally, but I think it mirrors the topic of circular economy as one concept of the whole movement. And why it's not happening, I think, aside of these mental challenges maybe that we have, I think circular business models are not profitable for some. From my perspective, I think the only thing that can help is regulation, because then you actually tend to, increase the tax on the waste. Thereby, as a producer, you're now starting to think, okay, so what can I do with it if I'm paying that much? The other part is, making the virgin products more costly, because then again, you're thinking about, okay, this is too costly for me. Can I find something cheaper, which is already a waste? So regulation is one thing. I think some know-how and technical opportunities are still missing. And last thing, I think it's a lack of vision in many aspects in terms of where are we going, what do we need as a country. So it's not a one-sided answer.
And are there some good practices, good examples from outside of the Czech Republic that I will ask, that inspire you, that you would say to yourself, okay, I wish we in Czech Republic would do it as, I don't know, somewhere else.
Yeah. Maybe someone from the audience would know. Maybe Brussels is super innovative in that. At least the bureaucrats are, I think. Netherlands is sometimes viewed as a frontrunner in circular economy. They're also very good in presenting it that way. No offense if there's anyone. I was studying there and I love the country. I think also Nordic countries view it, but that's more, again, viewed in the mental sphere. And there are many startups coming up from Nordics, that focus on this issue. And I think once you build the environment, the innovative ecosystems around it, of course, in order to make circular economy happen, you need the capacities, you need the skills, you need the knowledge, and that's not going to happen just from day one. So these countries are actually, step forward or step in front of us. And if circular economy at one point will be mainstream, and I believe it will be, then we're going to lag behind in comparison to these countries.
Thank you very much for those insights. Well, I would love someone else to do my job now. So please, if you have any questions, let's ask them, let's discuss, because we've covered some of the topics concerned circular economy and there are much more. So What are your questions? Come on, let's go ask, and we will have someone with microphone over somewhere. Yeah, microphone is behind you. It's coming right up. So first question, go for it.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for the interesting discussion and presentation. I actually have at the beginning a remark and then a question for both of you maybe, and it touches the topic of mainstreaming and accessibility of circular economy, because from my personal experience, it's not very easy to be conscious about not producing waste, not buying anything extra, not giving up the temptation to buy new clothes, shoes, but even just not food or cooking. Cooking produce such a waste. I didn't imagine how much waste I produce during COVID when I started cooking every day. And well, it's not easy, it's expensive. And my question is how to make circular economy more accessible to normal people, because I don't want to generalize, but I can imagine that as a society, we throw the garbage into, or we recycle into the blue and the yellow and the green, thinking how are we saving the planet, and that's it. That's where we stop, basically. So maybe some tips how to mainstream it better, because I think it's also confusing. For instance, you have these biodegradable packaging, but you can't recycle them into biodegradable waste, at least in Brussels. You have to put it in a normal waste. So why is it then biodegradable? What does it mean? Where I can recycle? Or you have one plastic bottle, but it's made of different plastics. So then it's not recyclable. So yeah, that's my question and my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
It's a very, very good question, and it's really hard to give you good answer and satisfy you with the answer. I feel that common man should focus what is good for himself. This is for me, we in product ecology usually work with the concept of functional unit of any products gives you some specific function. And this function is achieved by some material, energy, etc. And sometimes we forget what is the function of the specific product. In the context of circular economy, we very often discuss in Czech Republic, but it's very similar in other countries also, what is better, to pack the Coca-Cola in plastic or in glass bottle. And now there are wars in between the glass producers and plastic producers or aluminum can producers. But the problem is that we drink too much of sweet drinks. And if you change your habits, if you focus on what is good for yourself, then you decide, okay, I don't need to drink too much Coca-Cola. It will be good for me, for my health, and as well for the waste. And sometimes it's my personal play in this. I try to find the solution in very often contradictory situation to make steps behind and try to do something like this. Another example I have from the food packaging, that my experience is that if we have something like pre-cooked soup or some such products which are artificially prepared, and these has to be packed with more intensive packaging because they are more sensitive for transport, for wet, for temperature. So if you want to discuss the topic of the nutrition with the medicine doctors, they give you answer, try to eat fresh food. Don't use some prepared, something like this. And in such a case, you will not buy the pre-cooked soap, which is packed usually in aluminum, plastic, paper, and couple of materials in common, and you cannot separate it, you cannot recycle it efficiently. So then it's better to cook you told it, it was a lot of waste, of course, but maybe if you cook from the primary sources like potatoes and so, it will be less waste compared to pre-cooked products. I know it's not 100% answer to you, but I wanted to give you such a example of approach to this. We very often discuss about the side problems. Is better to plastic or glass? No, the problem is that we drink too much of sweet water. Remember this, because it's true. We drink it too much, it's not good for our health. And usually the plastic producers, I'm very, I hear it almost every day, they told us, if we will need to have the deposit system for bottles, it will cost a lot of money and consumer will pay it. And they make a stress to our government to do not apply a deposit system. But I think, why not? Why not? The consumer should pay it. I think it's necessary to be expensive for the consumer, because the sweet water is not you need for your life. Definitely not. And the problem is that the producers of plastic bottles very often told us that the consumer will pay it, but this is a manipulative explanation, because in the current system, of course, not the first consumer will pay it, but the others will pay it, because the plastic becomes as the waste, part of the waste. That means that our communities has to pay it partially. And that means that the input and the money are splitted in the social way to all of us, but the benefit is for single one, and we need to change it. So, okay, let's pay high deposit, let's pay high money for sweet water, because it's not a life need. You cannot live without it, and maybe better than with it.
I was just playing in my mind with your principle. So when I will be deciding in winter if I should buy this or that jacket, I just need to move to southern France and then everything will be okay. No, I'm just joking, of course. Pavel, would you like to add something to the first question before we go on?
No, I think I'm good. There was another one.
All right, so there is another question over here.
Thank you very much. I actually have a complementary question to what you just said. So, because you were focusing on Coca-Cola, for instance, which is indeed unhealthy, but what about water or something healthy? So in this sense, what would you do? What would be the policy initiative? Would you recommend, for instance, some subventions for healthy? And how do you define healthy? Or what do you put in this category? So, because we can all agree that some products, it's good if the consumer pays, but what about other, let's say, products full of vitamins or whatever?
Yes, we don't have time to name all of these examples, but let's start with the water. Again, what is the function? Function is to transport potable water for the population in, let's say, Czech Republic or Belgium. If this is the function, then you should choose the way which is the more, let's say, environmental friendly and more effective. We have at least 98% good tap water. Of course, there are some situations or some location where it is not, but then we can use some other system like packed water, of course. But generally, we have a good tap water. So there is another solution for such a case. Of course, not always, not everywhere, but we can do it. The plastic bottle filled with the table water is just a perfect business for the plasticers. It's not for water managers. I'm originally water manager at our faculty, so I'm a bit, how to say, podmaněný, no? No, I'm not objective in this, because water for water managers has to be in the pipes, because it has to flow. It's another specific question. Don't save the water in our tap, because we need to flow it because then it's healthy, it's fresh. Otherwise, standing water can be a problem, but it's for long other discussions. Yeah.
We will not be taking one by one all the products we can think of. So if anyone else has the question,
It's good. It's a good approach.
Just a minute. I saw Pavel that you wanted to add something.
I think it's a good one.
All right, so let's do milk. The question was about what about milk? So let's do milk, and then we probably move to some other topics.
Yes. Before I try to, I really do not have answer for milk, but I try to. Before this, I would like to recommend to sort the problems. If we have, let's say, communal waste, we can make proportion what is the highest content. It will be first probably the plastic for the beer, for the sweet water, and for common water. The milk will be less. So don't forget, but let's start with the principle. And the principle is the beer. We drink too much in Czech Republic, as like the sweet water. Also, there is a way for improvement. But with the milk, it's a specific question. I discuss it with the nutrition experts, and they are not unified in the answer how much of how many. I'm not sure in English. Sorry. How much of that we need? Some told us it's just for children. Don't drink it too much. Some other told us, okay, it has to be, but depends on quality. We can compare Tetra Pak, plastic bottles, glass bottles. Everything of this can be somehow sorted. And I can say you that if you will use a glass bottle for the milk and transport the milk from one part of the country to the another one, it will be more environmental problematic in compared to plastic. It is. The question is that we usually do not know how to account the environmental burden of the plastic. Until now, there is not a fixed methodology about the microplastics. We know that there are a lot in almost all environment compartment, but they are not finished the toxicological studies and some other evolution. It's not easy to compare what is better. It's in LCA, this is the principal question. What is better? 1 ton of carbon greenhouse gases or 1 gram of toxic cadmium? How to compare? And this is a bit similar with the plastic and the paper in the packaging. It's not easy to compare two very different materials with two different potential environmental impacts. So I'm sorry, I don't have the clear answer for the milk, but last comment is we, a couple of years, developed such a indicator, we call him P2P, package to product comparison. And my idea was, what is worst, the stuff inside, or the milk, or the packaging? And it's very interesting to see that if you have a product which itself is environmental important, has high impact, but we need it or we want it, then the role of packaging is not so important, because the packaging is just part of it. But in some specific cases, and they are not very rare, the packaging plays significantly higher role than the product itself. Then it is strange. Namely, it is the packed water. That is about several order of magnitude is higher the impact of the packaging in compared to the product inside. In the milk, there will be maybe different case, because the milk production is more complicated, produce more emissions starting from cattle, and so etc. And if we will accept that the milk is crucial for our food system, then we accept also some part of the environmental impact. I remember when I was young, before the revolution, we had the milk packed in such pouches per liter, just plastic pouch. Of course, it was strange. We were happy after the revolution. Now we have it in Tetra Pak, is more better. But if I compare it from the environmental point of view, maybe it was better. It was less material, just a few grams. Not easy to solve. The best is to have your battle and to go to your neighbor with the cattle. I know this is more in Austria. It's quite common. Of course, the big cities is different case, of course. But if you are in smaller towns, in villages, and as it is, for example, in Austria, as I know, it's quite common to go with your can for the fresh milk. Maybe this is the solution. From the sustainability point of view, this also support the social contact with the people. So another benefit.
I like it that you spoken like a true academic. Basically, you're saying it's more complex than that. Right. Thank you very much, Pavel.
I just wanted to follow up. I think the devil is hidden in the details. That if we, in some aspects, the circular economy is ideal case is we won't be consuming anything, right? At the end of the day, it's an over exaggeration. But on the maybe plastic bottle case, right? If we remove it, we're not using it, we're losing some European business that was here for quite some time, and they have some interest, and they provide some jobs, they provide some economic value to the economy as a whole. And I think that's the devil which is hidden in the detail, that we cannot just solve this problem by getting rid of something, because then there are other variables that we have to follow. It's just in the environmental sphere, we don't have just carbon emissions. There are other environmental impacts that we have to follow, but we don't have just environmental indicators. We have jobs indicators, we have economic indicators, and that's the tricky part. Like, how do we make up the system so that it actually generates some revenue as well, whilst not consuming the products that we have? And I think that's like I don't have an answer to that. It's just the magnet that kind of drags me to the circular economy, because
one of the questions circular economy asks, as you were mentioning in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's a tough one. I mean, we've optimized our economy based on one variable, and that's GDP, basically. Okay, so how can we set up the system so that we are actually producing as much prosperity as we can? And I guess if 8 billion people on the planet would sit on around one table, and they would be like, okay, I guess the environmental impact we're having on the Earth is quite bad, right? Let's do something with that. And the most let's say rich people on the planet would be, okay, so you don't have to work that much. Maybe I can give you something, and we can then put less pressure on the planet, and then be all in this fairy tale happy. But it's not happening. I mean, Europe is one place. There are other interests. We have also some security objectives. Thereby, we cannot just, in my view, degrow our economy. So many complex variables.
I have another example. I'm not a milk drinker.
Beer?
But
I will just ask you to be brief, because I would like to answer some other questions if there are in the audience, because we are very much focusing a lot for one question. So
too much milk.
Too much milk, and too much sweet drinks.
Yogurt is okay.
Maybe
I short example with yogurt.
No problem. So you have 1 minute. Go for it.
Okay, we did such study for the yogurt producer in Czech Republic, and
you weren't joking.
How to pack it, to plastic, to paper, to combination, and of course the result was that if you have a high volume of the yogurt, it's better compared to the packaging, because per 100 of gram it's less packaging. But in my case, when I eat the small yogurt, it's fine, I eat it. But if I have the big one, half a kilo, I like it, and I eat also the one. So as a result, it's high impact.
Okay, thank you. So again, what's the core problem? And now this is your bill.
Our bill, our consumption, what we want.
Okay, let's cover some more questions. Oh, there are many of them. So we have to be brief, gentlemen. So, lady in the second row. Yep. Only yes or no questions, please.
So I'm Nayan Tar from Zero Waste Scotland. And I think, Pavel, you had asked earlier examples from the audience, and I think I'd like to emphasize that Scotland's doing a lot of cool things. We have a circular economy minister, which is something not very many countries have. We published a circularity gap report. So we actually measured what the material flow analysis is. And we found out that in Scotland, it's just 1.8% circular. That means we have 98% gap in trying to reach that more circularity in our economy. And we also have a circular economy bill. So it's not a waste management bill, but it's actually a circular economy bill that's going to be tabled soon, and a route map. And together they look at packages all the way from designing to the end, waste management. So I do encourage people to look at Scotland because I think we're doing a lot of cool things and leading the way. But my question is that we've spoken a lot about circular economy and the environment and biodiversity, but there's also social impact, both good and bad, right? So if we stop consuming, then there's an impact in supply chains, not only within our countries, but abroad. People don't produce, for example, textiles are not going to be making clothes, so the jobs go down. But there's also the positive impact, for example, the jobs that come in, repair, remanufacturing, recycling, interactions through sharing libraries. So I guess I would just like to get your thoughts on how can we not only hitch the circular economy agenda to sustainability and biodiversity, but also maybe to the well-being economy. So if you have any thoughts about that, it'd be good to hear about it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, maybe the milk example was a good one. Yeah, I know that there's a debate a lot about circular economy that it omits a lot the social dimension, that it's kind of like just technocratic, kind of focusing on recycling and etc. I must say that this discussion is not really happening in the Czech Republic, I mean, in terms of like connecting these two dots. And I personally, I'm also sometimes I feel that if we have too many targets, we're going to miss all of them. The other point would be if you focus on just one thing, then you're going to miss a lot of other things in the system. So I must say it's not my primary concern in terms of circularity, but I think it's definitely a topic that has to get some focus. But I don't have specific examples on to which focus on. Sorry.
Me too. Maybe the sharing economy could be a good example, as you mentioned. This could be very well and very good. But what I'm really missing again in Czech Republic to support these economic systems into sharing economy, because the economy it's better to buy more things than to share it. And it's this problem. The economy.
Yeah, and I think sharing economy, I think, is interesting. And I do think it's part of circular economy. Someone doesn't. But sorry, I wake up really early this morning to get here. Yeah, with the sharing economy, I think it had a good hype at the beginning, but then a lot of people, there's like a lot of mental challenges, right? It was more like, I'm not gonna share this thing with someone else, it's just mine. And it's so for example, my girlfriend, she's afraid of hotels because she's afraid there's going to be bed bugs anywhere and she's going to take it to her.
So you have to buy a house for every location.
Exactly, yeah.
It's
a
tough.
camper van. So yeah, it's a lot of the things is just a mental roadblocks we have, and it's entrenched habits.
Let's go for the next question. There were a couple of hands in the air.
A microphone in my hand, so I will continue. Hi, good evening. My name is Karin Jancikova. Currently, I work for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung here in Brussels, and I'm focused on climate energy agenda. The name of the program is Multinational Development Policy Dialogue, a very complex name, but basically we are trying to bring perspectives from developing countries towards EU and back. And I would like to go a bit beyond circular economy seen as a recycling and our personal contribution to it, and focus more on large-scale things. And you mentioned your studio or consultancy where you support industries in becoming more sustainable and circular. And I know also you, Pavel, that you worked on this kind of decarbonization of industry via circular economy strategy. I'm interested in what's the status quo of this strategy, whether it's been kind of adopted or partially, because it could be interesting. And my other question is some good examples from your practice as a consultant with Czech industries and companies, where there are already some success stories of using circularity, means of a use of the material, because I see we have a huge dialogue with India now about green steel, what actually green steel means and the role of hydrogen, green hydrogen. And I saw a very nice advertisement coming from the UK using a UK model who is actually swimming in the emission, as they call it, brackets emission, coming from producing green hydrogen, which is actually water. And she is producing a moisturizer for your face. And I think this is the way how to advertise to be circular. And actually, if you use a green hydrogen, then the waste is actually water, which is very nice. So I just wanted to know about the, how to say, your experience with Czech companies and about the role of science and research and experimenting in making really circularity being a reality. Thank you. Hope not too long question. Thanks.
Okay.
It was a question for both of you, so maybe you can share it.
I have experienced that the companies are more interested in carbon footprinting and some other indicators, not directly on the circular economy itself. They usually want to achieve some goals like less CO2 emissions, for example, and looking at ways how to achieve of this. Some example where it worked in the context of circular economy was in automotive. We are working for Maxion company. It's one of the biggest car wheels producer world. Every sixth wheel of cars is from this company. It do not produce it under their brand, but under brand of Volkswagen, Audi, etc. And we do for them the LCA and looking ways how to diminish their carbon footprint. And now if they see that, for example, for the aluminum cast wheels, it's principle, the resource of aluminum. So they are now looking for a supplier from different countries. And because it's domino effect, if they have supply, for example, from Italy or from Turkey or Iceland, French, they also work with the aluminum producer, also with their suppliers, with their supplier of the energy. So it's more connected to the value chain evaluation than just the circular. But now the question is, namely, what about the secondary aluminum? What we face is the principal problems. What is the secondary aluminum? And how to calculate its carbon footprint. We can calculate everything, of course, but the rules, how it will be applied, because if it is post-consumer or post-industry, it's quite a different in the values. And the price of the secondary aluminum with low carbon footprint could be very high, because it could be very interesting. Now this will be the problem about the legislation or the methodology, how to assess it. But I know that the companies like these, but they are more internationally operated, they are interested in the supply chain in the context of circularity. So this is starting to be. And you mentioned also the hydrogen. I have personal experience with the hydrogen evaluation. We did the carbon footprint evaluation of secondary. The hydrogen production from the chemical factory, which has the dialysis process for some other chemical production. And as a side product, there is a hydrogen. And they had the idea that this hydrogen, because it's a side product, it is with zero carbon footprint. But it's not correct, because you have to allocate somehow the emissions, of course. And now they were very surprised when we give them the results, try to mass allocation or monetary allocation. It was different. And this will also need to be solved, how to unify the methodology of this calculation, because it plays a significant role in next months, how and what materials will be declared Maybe the new directive about greenwashing will open the debate about this, but I'm a bit skeptical now. So all the energy for the hydrogen production in this case was the fossil, of course, but it was a side product from the production of. Yeah, it's not easy. This. Now, try to you.
No. I think more to your question. I think circular economy and the decarbonization agenda, and that's also why we've studied the report. I think it's coming in terms of that companies will focus more on the part. To what extent do our materials have a carbon footprint on the environment? For example, in the building sector, we know that up until now we've been focusing on the energy efficiency, on the operational emissions, and less so on the embodied carbon. But it's coming also with the ESG topic, with the pressure from the banks, with looking at the carbon footprint, not just in the scope 1 and 2 part, but also with the scope 3. So what kind of materials am I buying? And then you're asking, how can I reduce my emissions by buying a material which is less carbon intensive? And there you're coming into, okay, is there some supplier who can actually produce quotation mark green cement, green steel, etc.? And I think this is very close also with the EU regulation, like the Energy Performance Buildings Directive, which will be now focused also on embodied carbon. And developers will have to measure also embodied carbon from, I think, 2027 for some specific buildings. So if that question was also like to the, like, how does the circular economy overlap with decarbonization agenda and how the companies are actually reacting to it, I think not yet that much at this point, but it's going to be very soon until it's coming. And in terms of the practical examples, I think Mr. Kočí has many more, not only milk related, but maybe we can get to it afterwards.
We have time for one or two more questions, so I'd like to focus on some more questions. I saw your hand over there in the first row, and then the second question, and then we will stay here after the end and we can discuss it more. So if you have more questions and maybe you would like to ask them in more personal space, we'll stay here. Will you stay here? Yeah, they will stay here too. so it's okay. All right, so your question?
Hello, I'm Markéta Krejčí, Eurobureaucrat. So the question is very easy. What shall we, Eurobureaucrats, European, do to get support of the Czech citizens for the Green Deal? What we do wrong? And second question is also, if you could choose any reform that you could do in Czech Republic or apply any measures to improve circularity, what would it be?
Will you begin?
I may begin. Well, because how to get more support for the Green Deal is it's part of my job, so it's part of what I do, and I think it's not up to you. You can do anything from here. In my point of view, I think it's up to us, and we have to explain it. We have to find different names for it, as you mentioned, because Green Deal is a buzzword and it just doesn't work. And there are a couple of recently there has been it's a very interesting sociological study. What words in Czech are dangerous in the Czech context, and Green Deal is a very dangerous word. Never use Green Deal in Czech Republic. When you translate it into Czech, it's already better. Okay, because it's not such a buzzword, and I think the main work we have to focus on is in the Czech context, and I don't think the European Union can do something from Brussels to the Czech Republic. I think it's done well, and in my point of view, well, we have to explain it to ourselves and to our fellow citizens.
Yeah, maybe if I can follow up, I completely agree. I think knowing the local language is really important. And again, when I came from abroad, then I came back to the Czech Republic, no one understood what I was saying. It was like talking to an oak. I had a completely like Euro language that no one in the Czech Republic understood. And I think it's really important to be well aware and sensitive to anyone, and as I said, everyone wants a clear nature, but it's more about the words and labels we put into it. So that's one. Another one was today I had a meeting here at one of the foundations, and I was discussing with them, okay, so maybe how can we help from the national perspective, because I know you're focused on the EU perspective, and it was a foundation whose aim was to, like, they have some resources, but they mostly focus on EU legislation and on, let's say, lobbying on side of the NGOs in terms of like promoting the right tools and right measures that they think are good. And then it will just trickle down to the individual member states. And the trickle down part is very difficult. And on the ground, there has to be someone or some organizations, some thought leaders who are explaining it in the local language. And I think that they either need support or they need some sort of, embracement. So I think being also focused on the national member states level and not having maybe just the ambition for everything to be top down, that would be maybe one thing. And in terms of the measures, I think the very big thing would be landfill fee. A very big thing from my perspective would be more effective public procurement on the national side. So like the push and pull factors, but there are, I guess, many more.
Just a couple more to the Green Deal. It's really interesting when you just take the areas Green Deal focuses on and then show those individually to Czech citizens. They want basically all of them. But because, do we want to protect our forests? Yes. Do we want to more sustainable agriculture? Of course. Do we want clean air? Yes. We want those things. But when you say Green Deal, typical Czech person says, "Oh, you want to take my combustion engine car in 2035." Yeah. So it's really just a detailed work about narratives, and I think you need to know the local, or be sensitive to the local history and local fears and traumas. Like, our parents fought for freedom from the communist era, and now a lot of them feel like, okay, somebody else is telling us what to do, and we need to be sensitive to that. I think with Green Deal and with all those policies, it's the job is for us to make it ours. So it's not EU is telling us to do something, but it's we want to do something. And I think it is very much connected to having a vision as a nation, as a state. What you were mentioning earlier. Who do we want to be? And I think we are still looking for it a bit in Czech Republic. Yes, last question, please.
Thank you for being here. It was wonderful to hear it. Sounds like a revolution. And my question is very simple. You mentioned negative externalities. Is there a product sold in Czech Republic or in Europe which you think is missing the point, which means there's zero externalities calculated into its price? So which product kind of should be first taxed so that it's extremely expensive or it costs what it should cost?
I know it's very sensitive to say. From the environmentalist point of view, it is the energy, the product. I know it's strange. We are happy that it's not so expensive as we were aware 1 year ago. But the main, I'm not from the social point of view, not from the economical point of view. What we see that in this time, in last decades, we have the cheapest energy we ever had as a humanity. It's very cheap to hide something, to just manipulate with something. It's very cheap today. Some years ago, it was not. If you were a king 500 years ago, you had 70 people as your staff. This we have in average every of us, the 70 in energy content. That means we are living as a kings in the medieval or Renaissance time. This because cheap energy. And that's, of course, I'm happy to live this way. It's nice, but I see this is the principal problem, because if there is something cheap, we do not feel it as expensive of value. We just consume it. And behind the energy production is the principle in current, I mean, fossil-based energy production is a lot of environmental impacts. And as consequences, this changed our habits very significantly in last 100, 200 years. Because of cheap energy, we can produce a huge amount of ammonium-based fertilizers, so that we can apply them in huge amounts on countryside. It's fine that we can produce a lot of food for new billions of people, but new millions of people will bring another problem. They will consume something, they will need something. It's problematic to say it like this. For me, if one product, it's the energy, because it changes us to keep it.
So before Ukraine, before the war, so Czech, the whole Europe or half of Europe imported cheap gas from Russia. So in those days, it would make, from what you say, it would make perfect sense to import the gas from Russia for the same price, but tax it heavily on the EU borders?
There was a big problem in the case that there is no the same nature gas from Russia or from Norway, for example. If you calculate with the carbon footprint, one of the indicator can be expressed. The energy, one amount of energy received from the nature gas from Russia has higher carbon footprint in compared, for example, to Norway, because they have a lot of leakage during the mining and transport, etc. So maybe the taxes or some part of carbon footprinting in the economy could express this. And it was before the war. It's not only because of the war, but even before the war, we had some analysis, and some companies was focused to different suppliers of nature gas, not because of Russia, because in the new concept of carbon footprint and ESG, maybe this will play a more significant role. And if we are, it's more broader discussion than just the circular economy. Energy is quite out of circular economy. It's strange, but it is. As you ask about the indicators of circularity, the material circularity indicators usually do not play with the energy, with the fossils. It's sometimes strange, but it depends on methodology. For me, it's more crucial the final impacts, final environmental impacts, for example, carbon footprint or toxicity, some other of them. But what in the context of Russian war mentioned and the Green Deal, I think more than feel that if we will in 100% apply the Green Deal, it will be more effective than all sanctions we used against Russia. It will be more powerful to stress Russia to their borders. And this also maybe explain why the Czech are skeptic about the Green Deal, because the Czech society is a victim of Russian hybrid war and the communication war, and it's a long time, very, very intensive work of this manipulative information. So nobody read Green Deal. Almost nobody. It's a couple of pages. It's quite fine to read it, but all of them hate it. Nobody knows what is inside, but they hate it as a result of hybrid war from the Russia. And it's not only the last 2 years, it's much, much longer. And if you think who will be the beneficial of the Green Deal, if it will be 100% realized, it will not be to Russia. It will be the victim of the Green Deal, because the Russian economy is based on the supplying of the fossil fuels to Europe. immediately, if Europe will be independent of fossil fuels, it will make significant problems for Russia. They are brave. They are not stupid like it looks now because of the war, but they knew this 10 years ago. So that's why they start to change mind of our society. They do not want we were sustainable because it will makes their economical problems. I never think that when I started to be the environmentalist, that if you want to do sustainability, you start with some environmental technology, but the second step will be the geopolitics. And the third is the philosophy, of course. But there was no answers in the technological point of view, but from the geopolitical way, it gives me a sense now what happens. And that's really why the Czech people are skeptic, not only Czech, about the Green Deal, because of manipulation from the Russia. It was not their, they don't want we were independent of their gas and crude oil, etc.
Maybe just to your question, I think another thing which is quite controversial is food, meat, dairy products, and discussion around putting some tax on that, of course.
Back to the milk, right?
Back to the milk.
Back to the milk.
I would not
yogurt, not yogurt.
I wouldn't want to be the person who would be propagating a meat tax on meat in the Czech Republic. I think it would be like similar to tax on beer or something like that.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for this inspiring discussion. Thank you all for being here. And for some closing words before we end, before we go to the after party, please stay with us, talk with us some more, because we just grazed some topics and we have much more to talk about. I would like to ask Vendula Nováčková to the stage to tell us some closing words.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, that you could join us today. It was, again, very interesting edition of Science Café, and it's thanks to you, gentlemen, Vladimír, Pavel, and Petr. Thank you so much. And I would like to also thanks to our teams of representation of South Moravian region to the EU, CZELO, Czech Center Brussels, and Prague House in Brussels. Thank you so much because thanks to teams of all these organizations, we can be here today and we can enjoy the evening. So thank you again, and now I would like to invite you for a glass of South Moravian wine. And today also you can enjoy the non-alcoholic wine. So thank you so much.
Thank you.